Hi, my name's Daniel Borin from Stratamax and welcome to my video on electric cars. So in this video, I will answer the question whether there is a superior form of transport. As many of you have probably guessed by now, I am shooting this video from a semi-autonomous vehicle. But before you come to any conclusions about the legality of safety of this, I am in fact on a private road. It's the Queensland Police Driver Training Centre outside of Wacol. We're currently being driven around this circuit by the sensors, the camera and the computer and the Model S here. And as we go around this circuit, I'm going to introduce you more intimately to the concept of an electric vehicle. So the core difference of the electric vehicle versus traditional cars is the fact that it's driven by a big battery as opposed to petrol or diesel. So essentially it's like a giant remote control car. And what that means is that there are far less moving parts. You know, your traditional cars, they've got air filters, spark plugs, coils, harmonic balancers, pistons, rings, etc. And then you've also got the elements of the combustion engine, the crank, the valves, the lifters, the injectors, the fuel pumps, regulators, and more. So each of these parts can wear and tear, they create heat, they create noise. And because this is run off a battery, it doesn't need any of those. And I've just gone through my first service, which was an 18-month, 20,000 kilometer service. And the only things they needed to replace was the windscreen wiper blades, top up the windscreen fluid, and replace the battery in the key fob. So over that time, the overall cost of running this vehicle for me was really probably less than $100. And that's because I get the majority of my charging off the solar panels at home. And from an efficiency perspective, that's fantastic for me. What this means from an environmental perspective is there's very little carbon footprint. There's no emissions from the car at all. And the sound that's generated by the car is also far less than that of a traditional vehicle, particularly if you're standing on the street as the car drove past. What we generally don't talk about here in Australia is that those car emissions result in 40% more deaths from cars than the road toll itself. And further to that, it also contributes to non-lethal type health problems such as respiratory disease, asthma, and so forth. Another aspect is that noise pollution. And in an EPA survey, 80% of the respondents said that traffic noise was the most common and largest disturbance in terms of noise. And 20% of all respondents were moderately to severely annoyed by traffic noise. So when you think about big cities, that traffic noise is just providing that base level of stress that's interrupting relaxation, interrupting sleep in our streets. And having lived in Shanghai for a long time, where that traffic noise can be quite significant, I know from personal experience how that feels. But in Shanghai, they actually banned the use of horns because of that contributed to that traffic noise as well. So what about this semi-autonomous business? Let's have a look at this. So the radar and the camera on the vehicle are constantly tracking the road conditions to keep the car in its lane and at a constant speed, taking other vehicles into account. So the lines on the street here are providing the camera with guidance so that it knows where to steer and to take those bends. You simply pull the stick down here to engage the autopilot, as like so, and the car essentially takes over and enables you to I guess relax a little bit on the ride. In the Tesla, you still need to keep your fingers on the wheel at certain points to let the car know that you're still there. And my car here is running what's known as Tesla's Autopilot 1. The current model of the Model S and the Model 3 have what's called Autopilot 2, which has additional cameras and sensors in the car. And Tesla promises that they will support fully autonomous driving from those vehicles. So what that means is essentially that the car doesn't need a human driver behind the wheel whatsoever, which is a very interesting concept. They're not there yet, but they're certainly pushing quickly to that end goal. So the only thing holding back the electronic vehicle, in my opinion, has been the cost. And towards the end of the year, we'll see a couple of cars come in around the $50,000 mark, which is going to make it much more accessible to everyday Australians that want to make a good environmental choice and a good economic choice versus the cost of a petrol-based car. The advantages and the reducing costs are the reasons the Australian energy market operator has actually doubled their forecast for the take-up of electronic vehicles in the next 2 decades, predicting that at that point, half of all vehicles on the road in Australia will be powered purely by electricity. So in closing, are EVs a superior form of transport? I'll let you decide. Thank you for watching my video on electronic vehicles.